There's so much fear and greed that comes into crypto that it always decouples. The reality is everybody's hopes and dreams are in this trade, but it's looking like it might run all the way through till, end of H2, which kind of makes sense. Again, the ISN, the business cycle is the driver of speculation, risk, excess capital, all of that stuff, because people have higher earnings. We're not positive yet. And that pushes people out the risk curve, and that's what drives the real cycle, particularly the alt season. The alt season we find is highly correlated with ISM. It's the same as the Bitcoin dominance chart. To me, it's either forming a large head and shoulders top or a GMI crash pattern, which is the fall, the rally, the failed new high, and then again, big move lower. And it would make sense. But we need the ISM, we need disposable earnings to rise so people can recycle capital into more speculative things. It feels that the market is not really positioned. Liquidity is rising. We're getting to the point where the liquidity multiplier in token prices goes up. We're also getting to the point of alts outperforming Bitcoin, where market breadth is improving. We've got activity across the space growing. We've got the narrative of people trying to build big things or storing wealth in Bitcoin or building big things on other chains. Smells to me like there's a yellow fruit hanging around here somewhere. From my work, as you know, for us, it's kind of straight up from here. I don't know where Bitcoin gets to by kind of August, but we got a decent run. I think we'll be surprised at the upside in how fast stuff runs. Then we'll cool off for a bit, but even using Global N2 as a forward indicator, it barely went sideways for a period of time. So that feels like some chop in late summer. And now Global N2 is rising again, and it's got extremely good correlation. Now, it won't be perfect all the way, but it just feels to me that, from here on in, basically, we've got a really good run. But generally, it feels like the mid-tier outperforms Bitcoin, but the bottom tier, there'll be cases of things that do because they're new and they're interesting and they get attention. But generally speaking, there's just not enough capital that flows that far out the risk curve. I think of it as a function of the amount of capital and attention available, right? So like attention times capital, right? That's the whole game in this. And there are so many coins now, ignoring all the meme coins for now, using Bitcoin as a reserve asset, but also building the entire government infrastructure on blockchain. So it's fascinating to see. And then a lot of people say to me, well, if all of this money's coming in from the sovereigns, that may produce an outside return. And I'm thinking, well, if we're going from 3 trillion to 100 trillion, which is my estimate by just extrapolating out the trend rate of growth, you need larger players each time because the market cap is bigger, right? There's no way you're going to get to 15 trillion this cycle unless you've got bigger players. So it's kind of, I don't think it's what people think it is. I think it's just a function of the size of the market. The bigger it becomes, the more that those people are involved in all the other things that are coming. Because everyone's like, it's a super cycle because of this. I'm starting to err towards, well, we've talked about this before, a longer cycle, just because the business cycle is still below 50. So generally it takes a while to climb up. And then we use the GMI Financial Conditions Index, and that has a 9-month lead. And with the dollar breaking down even today, it's starting to suggest that this may go even into Q2 2026, that we're more like 2020 than we are in 2021. Or it's spookily similar to 2017. Buying that low in the first, that's what we did, and it worked really well. Back end of 2022, when global liquidity, it doesn't give the strongest price action, but I don't know, Bitcoin's up 6x since then. So it does work just by getting the bottom of it. But the breakout is when it really counts, right?
If there is chips to be taken off the table in Bitcoin or crypto.
And this is not necessarily the full cycle top. It can be sub-cycles within, right? Because I'm looking at got to 5s a couple of times, backs off again. So you kind of use it like a weekly RSI kind of idea, is like an overbought, oversold indicator. How I think about this to explain to people is call it a 90% correlation roughly. It's when you look at what's the other 10%, it's often the fear and greed, the element where the market gets over ahead of itself. So when it gets too obscene, people have taken too much risk. And then you've got other scores like leverage that then you would add on to that and say, yeah, and the leverage is built up, and that's why we're in excess. In terms of percentage of the overall market cap, because the natural leverage number will expand over time as more people come into the market using derivatives. But we've got these larger players as well. So as the market cap goes up, we have to measure it as that kind of percentage, like we do with short interest in stocks and stuff. Just running through, some of the key tokens and stuff like that. And also if there's anything else you want to add about Bitcoin. I mean, what you've shown us is it's super neutral from here. So we can have a run and let's see what leverage and other things build up.
So looking outside of Bitcoin, we are in a super bullish liquidity regime, right? So, and Bitcoin is going to be breaking the all-time high. It already has in the last week or so, and it's retraced. And, could chop around here, but I don't think we're going to see a hell of a lot of like downside, not a large move, given those three risk scores where they are, then none of them being excessive.
And this can also be, I guess this is highly correlated with Bitcoin dominance.
Yes.
Is another simpler way of looking at it. So you can see what a full alt season looks like. Because there was just less around, right? You had a bunch of ICOs, but you didn't have a lot of alts really. Not like now.
Yeah. You couldn't have even really put together a top 200 back then.
Yeah, agree. So this is the start of an alt season you're seeing. I think they always decouple at the end of the cycle. There's so much fear and greed that comes into crypto that it always decouples. And so it sucks people in too late. Obviously, it always does. And it's a problem, but it's a feature, and the indicators you built before actually really help understand where are you in the FOMO cycle, because it's basically those indicators put together are basically FOMO.
You've arrived at where you think
not 100%, but we're kind of erring that way. I mean, definitely Q1, but it's looking like it might run all the way through till end of H2, which kind of makes sense. Again, the ISM, the business cycle, is the driver of speculation, risk, excess capital, all of that stuff, because people have higher earnings. We're not positive yet. So although tech stocks have done well, stock markets have done decently well, Main Street has not. Businesses are still struggling. Yeah. But once that turns, and I think the Federal Reserve will be cutting rates because, as we've been saying for a long time, Julie and I, inflation is coming lower, and it is, then we will see Main Street or people with mortgages, household income increasing, and that pushes people out the risk curve, and that's what drives the real cycle, particularly the alt season.
So traditionally, Bitcoin does this when, liquidity increases or decreases. When has been the exceptional price rises or movements in the Bitcoin price, and what has that sensitivity to the global liquidity situation been? And I found that, it's very clear that we've had like these very bullish regimes where global liquidity expands very rapidly. And when it expands very rapidly, but also when it sort of breaks out of a period of contraction, generally Bitcoin's sensitivity to the increase in global liquidity increases, it magnifies. And with a lag, so does crypto. So it's kind of something that we already knew. We looked back and we could look at the price charts and go, Bitcoin rallies first and then altcoins rally next. So we've got, I think, a stronger guide in terms of what the potential price will be during this expansion period in global liquidity. And, on top of that, Raoul, for the pro community, I built something that's been irking me for like 2 years, which is, well, even longer. It's like some kind of risk model. So, there are other factors that play as a market. Like if you think back at the last cycle, why Bitcoin didn't reach somewhere close to 100,000. That's what everyone was calling for.
전쟁과 관세, 시장에 공포가 만연하고 있습니다. 열심히 벌어서 모은 돈으로 산 자산들의 가치가 떨어질까 모두가 전전긍긍하고 있을 때 누군가는 기회로 보고 있죠. 최근 비트코인과 이더리움이 심하게 하락했는데요. 하지만 라울팔은 여전히 긍정적인 전망을 내다보고 있었습니다. 모든 지표들이 긍정적이라며 알트 시즌이 올 것이라고 내다보고 있었죠. 게다가 제 채널에 올라오는 대부분의 전문가들은 비트코인과 그 시장에 대해 좋은 말을 할 수밖에 없는 위치에 있는 분들이 대부분입니다. 고객 자금을 굴리고 있거나 회사 자금으로 비트코인을 구매한 사람들이 많기 때문이죠. 급등락하는 비트코인 시장에서 급등과 급락을 반복하는 차트를 보고도 개인 투자자들이 욕심과 공포를 떨쳐내고 평정심과 내 자산이 우상향을 하는 것은 말처럼 쉽지가 않으실 겁니다. 저 또한 전업 투자자 생활을 오래 했지만 항상 좋은 자리를 기다리고 인내해야 수익을 조금씩 낼 수 있었습니다. 그래서 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀에서는 어떻게 하면 일반 개인 투자자들도 투자 시장에서 수익을 낼 수 있을까? 구독자분들께 어떻게 하면 조금이라도 도움을 좀 드릴 수 있을까? 고민을 하다가 구독자분들도 비트코인이 명확하게 상승 추세가 나왔을 때만 투자를 하실 수 있게 한다면 수익이 조금 나지 않을까? 라는 생각을 하게 되었는데요. 제가 전업 투자를 하면서도 개발자로 오래 일을 했기 때문에 저도 써볼 겸 유료 결제를 해서 결국 만들었습니다. 바로 비트코인이 정말 신뢰할 수 있는 상승 추세인 건지 횡보인지 하락인지 알 수 있게 도움을 주는데요. 지금 보고 계시는 건 비트코인 차트인데요. 제가 빨간색 네모 박스로 표시해둔 곳을 보시면 주황색 61선과 파란색 121선이 교차하는 구간에서 추세가 변동되는 걸 보실 수 있습니다. 실제로 지금 비트코인은 최근에 61선과 121선이 데드크로스 하방 교차하면서 조정이 나오고 있는데요. 제가 운영 중인 관점 채널에서는 보시다시피 2월 25일부터 줄곧 비트코인 하락 관점을 말씀드리고 리스크 관리에 대해서 말씀을 드렸고 많은 분들이 도움을 받으셨습니다. 물론 데드크로스가 난다고 해서 무조건 하락하지도 상승하지도 않습니다. 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀에서 개발한 알파빗 지표는 약 8개의 고급 추세 기준과 트레이더들의 노하우를 담아서 차트가 상승할 확률이 높을 때 신호가 나오도록 개발을 하였습니다. 그 결과 저희 전문 트레이딩 팀 또한 판단에 도움받을 정도로 만족할 만한 놀라운 성과를 보였습니다. 시중에 유료로 팔 수 있을 정도로 가치 있는 지표이지만 저희 비트의 아버지 채널 영상을 시청해주시는 구독자분들께는 무료로 제공해드리기로 마음먹었습니다. 저 또한 며칠 밤새 테스트하며 어렵게 만든 지표이지만 구독자분들 성원에 힘입어 저 또한 도움을 받고 있기 때문에 어렵게 공유드리기로 마음먹었습니다. 초보자분들부터 경력이 오래된 트레이더분들까지 굉장히 큰 도움을 받을 수 있는 지표라 도움이 되실 거라고 자부합니다. 그리고 또한 투자자라면 항상 있을 수 있는 시나리오와 리스크 관리를 해야 하며 저희 앤드류 트레이딩 팀 또한 2025년 비트코인 전망과 알트코인 포트폴리오를 분석해두고 시장에 임하고 있습니다. 신청 방법은 하단 더보기란과 고정 댓글에 나와 있으니 많은 신청 부탁드리고 도움 받아보셔서 이번 하락장에서도 모두 성투하시길 바라겠습니다.